Coming up, as Summer League unfolds for the Brooklyn Nets, one Keon Johnson continues to make a claim for a potential roster spot in the NBA regular season, plus the recovery from injury for Dariq Whitehead. Can we see the possibility, the potential of a player that we can get excited about? We dive in on it all coming up next.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, my friends, it is Locked On Nets podcast right here on Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. He's Doug Norrie. I'm Adam Marnbrecht. We thank you, as always, for making us your first listen of the day. We are 100% free on all those great platforms. And let you know, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Even though all those playoffs are over around the sports world, we know that you're going to have FanDuel covering customers all summer long with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on to get started today. And Doug, oh baby, Summer League. When hope springs eternal and dreams come to life. We're going to talk about Noah Clowney, obviously doing what you expect him to do. Talk about Jalen Wilson and his perimeter shooting. And yes, Dariq Whitehead as well. But Keon Johnson, the man with a plan, drafted in the same year as one Cam Thomas, wants, nay, demands to be a part of the Brooklyn Nets' future in the 2024-2025 season.
Time to overreact, baby. Both the good and the bad. That's what Summer League is all about. You go to Vegas and you just completely overreact to 2 games worth of basketball. Now, I think there's a bunch of takeaways here. I think for the Nets, who go into obviously a period of just transition for the team in terms of going from wanting to win to trying to see what maybe some young guys you can hit on and maybe some guys that you can find that are going to increase their value over the next couple of years. And Keon Johnson, at least, starting to look like a guy that should break through with the team. And while Summer League isn't for everybody, there are ways that you can really stand out from the crowd. And one is to be just look more athletic and be an efficient scorer when you're given the time and the chance to actually do it. And Keon Johnson in the first 2 games of Summer League has flashed, the skills that had him as a first round pick back in the day. He bounced around a lot here and he's somewhat of a journeyman, which is crazy when you consider the guy's only 22 years old, but it's sometimes you just need those extra couple years. I mean, he came out really, really young, and now it looks like he's starting to put it together in a way that probably should just have him be on the team this year with a roster spot, with the way that he sort of showcased his ability, which we can talk about a little more in depth here as we go.
Yeah, I think, listen, again, it matters that the Nets are in the rebuild, that there are roster spots available here, and why wouldn't you, right? I mean, we've talked about this already this offseason, that this should be a year when you look at young players and you say it's your opportunity to develop. And we know at the highest level, the Noah Clowneys of the world, we'll talk about Dariq Whitehead, but bringing back Trendon Watford, it's like, great, now give big minutes to these players and let's continue to develop them or see what they can be. Keon Johnson, at least right now, it feels like should fall into that category. And you mentioned, from a Summer League perspective, only 2 games in, but shot 57% from the field overall in those 2 games, 7 of 12 and 9 of 16 respectively. Didn't take many shots from beyond the arc in game 1, did it in game 2 and looked good doing that, and then filled out the stats in the rest of the categories, rebounds, assists. Like, he's done a little bit of everything. That first game on Friday night, which we didn't come in and talk about, had a couple of steals, had a few blocks just for fun out of a guard position. The overreaction piece is, oh my God, this guy looks better than a lot of players in Summer League, which we've always said is the barometer. Look better than a lot of these guys, and that means you probably deserve a shot at the NBA level. The flip side of that coin would be showing it at Summer League doesn't always translate, and I still want to be excited about Keon Johnson, even though when you go and look at his NBA sample size, it's not great shooting percentages from the field. It's a little bit of struggle from beyond the arc, although he spiked with the Nets in very, very, very limited sample size, 5 games last season. It just comes down to that. The question just comes down to, will we see Keon Johnson capable of repeating this type of stat line, even on a smaller scale at the NBA level? Because right now, it hasn't been able to translate, right?
Yeah, so here's the good news when it comes to Summer League. I will say is, if you can't crush Summer League, you are almost for sure going to do nothing at the NBA level as an on-ball guard or wing.
Yes.
I'm going to give a caveat to say the bigs get a little bit of a pass here because you're more reliant on like sort of who your point guard and floor general kind of stuff is. The pace is way faster. So I'm going to give a pass to like, as you kind of get bigger, the less you can do sort of for yourself, even though it's going to work in an NBA environment, it's not going to translate. So the first step is always, can you dominate like sort of what's going on here? And I think for him, that is clearly yes. I said this yesterday watching the game. I was like, some of the stuff that he's doing here is not going to work in the NBA level. Like he's turning the corner on some defenders. He's getting to the rim against bigger, like not guys that aren't huge. Those guys are all going to get bigger at the NBA level. They're going to get stronger. They're going to get smarter around rim protection. And some of the times where he's finishing around the rim, it's just not going to work. Like you can see it. You can just see it. It's like, okay, that looked cool. That's never happened when you're playing.
Cool now. Won't look cool.
When it's Joel Embiid. Yeah, when it's Joel Embiid, at center, or it's like it's the Celtics defense or something like that, which is going to switch to some guy on you who's going to clamp you. They're bigger than their guards are all bigger than you.
Drew Holiday between you and the basket.
It's like, oh, should I take on Drew Holiday or Dariq White or Tatum or Jaylen Brown or beat Staps in the drop? It's like not going to work, right? So, but you do have to show that you can like sort of like dominate here as this guy to be able to even progress. Because if you don't, we don't even need to have a conversation, really. Like if you can't beat your guys consistent, and we're going to talk about Dariq Whitehead here in a little bit, even though it's like a little probably still too early. But if you can't beat your guys very consistently here, you have no chance at the next level. And we can just know it's like, okay, good. We saw it. It's not there. All good, but let's call it a day. And one final thing very quickly on the 3-point shooting. You're right that it like hasn't been with him for like most of his career. He did spike it with the Nets last year. He also kind of spiked it in the G League too at 38%, right? He shot 38% from 3 on more than 5 attempts. And you're like, oh, maybe he just kind of has starting to figure this part out. And that's pretty important, I think. So I think we look at both samples, NBA and G League, you're like, this is not just 2 games or run hot. We might have something clicking here.
And we saw the little sample size, as I said, end of last season with the Nets that got the fan base. As soon as Summer League was starting this year, it was, oh, okay, let's see what Keon Johnson is capable of. It looks like he's checking the boxes to make him deserving of an opportunity. And by the way, just like Trendon Watford, who got brought back now, this is the same thing. And even more important now when you're in a full rebuild, it's you've identified this player. You had him here a year ago. You brought him back into Summer League. Go ahead and get him on the roster, because you can end up, if every year, even when you have 1,000 picks going forward, every year, if you can identify one young player, specifically young talent, that looks like they have some upside, it never hurts to bring him into the fold and be able to use them going forward. So good for Keon Johnson. This is great for Keon Johnson. We're talking about both sides of the coin, but so far he's done nothing but impress over these 2 games. Coming up here in a second, Dariq Whitehead. The injury, the comeback from the injury, and what has been certainly a less than exciting sample size. Should it be a concern, or do we give the young man a little bit more run? Coming up here in a second, we dive in.
All right, before we get to that, I'll tell you about our friends over at FanDuel. Look, it's the middle of the summer. Sometimes you can feel like sports is just kind of stopping, especially during this week. Sometimes it feels like it grinds to a halt. That's not the case over at FanDuel. FanDuel keeps you going all summer long. NBA Summer League they got going over here. They got baseball. It's heading into the All-Star break. Maybe you want to get a little in on the home run derby. Pete Alonso plus 300 over there to win the home run derby. As a hometown guy, you can get into that with your, when you get over on FanDuel. They got you covered all summer long. This summer, FanDuel's hooking up all customers with a booster or bonus daily. There's something for everyone every day, even kind of like when there's no major games going on, which is pretty impressive. Head on over to FanDuel.com. Start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball.
All right, as we continue today's Locked On Nets episode, we, of course, ask you, are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN all day? Are they making too much noise with all the shouting? Well, then switch over to Locked On Sports Today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel, and it's programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you that can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube and free on the Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and you know it, it's your team, and it's every single day. Now, we jump to Dariq Whitehead, the other young player who is 2 years removed from playing any meaningful basketball, who was injured at Duke and injured when he came into the league with the Nets, and you come to Summer League, and we talked about it, and I drove the hype train coming in, Doug. It has not been what you would call great for Dariq Whitehead. However, because you got the second game, if we talked about it after the Friday night game, I said, I'm not going to worry about it. He's coming back from injury. Like, give it another game. But in my darkest moments, I was very concerned. Game number 2 at least showed you, and there were things in game number 1, which we'll talk about defensively, but a couple of step back threes in game number 2. It looked like he was just getting a little bit more comfortable. None of the shooting percentages are the way you want them to be. He's in a hard spot here, at least from analyzing him because of the injuries. Like you say, you do want to be able to beat people at the summer league level in order to make your case for the NBA level. But I just feel like it's going to take the entire summer league to understand if his legs are back underneath him. He talked about it after the first couple of games too, trying to get comfortable out there. This is very much still like okay, let's wait and see. I'm not going to make any real judgments about Dariq Whitehead after 2 summer league games.
I'm not going to make any long-term judgments because he's 19 years old. So I want to be really careful about what I'm going to say here. I am not making some prediction about his career. I'm only going to evaluate the here and now of what has happened. And it was bad. Like there's just no other word for it. So I'm not saying he's going to be bad forever. I'm not saying the career's over. Those are not things. If we're just evaluating the first 2 summer league games with all the caveats you gave, he's had an extensive injury history. He's been out of live basketball pretty much for years. There's a lot of speed stuff that comes along with that. And like, there's just lots and lots and lots that comes along with. So because I know people are going to say like, well, I'm identifying and dealing with the objections right now. Okay. In the sales world, like I've let you know what the objections are. I get it. That being so, now if we just rewind it back and say, what have we seen at Summer League? It's been bad. It's bad. There's just no other way around it. It looks really uncomfortable. That's to be expected. The bigger concern to me is that while it looks like he's probably healthy, there's like no burst. Like there's no real speed at all. He can't. He looked really uncomfortable, and even times where it was like, okay, here's where maybe the athleticism could take over. There was none of that. He's not able to turn the corners on much weaker defenders. He had basically one good stretch, like 1 30-second stretch in the 2 games, which was where he attacked the closeout, step back 3. Although I'll say a little bit on that step back 3, it was mostly because I don't think he could beat the guy, and he ended up hitting a step back 3.
Don't.
Then he had a steal.
He
had a steal. The pass was telegraphed, but he was in the lane. Nice job, because he was beating the guy to the weak side corner, and then he finished in transition on getting down the court, like ran the court and finished. And I was like, okay, that was pretty nice, but he's a long way to go. This is probably a whole season in the G League, would be my guess, based on like this first look. And that's fine. 19 years old, season in the G League. It was a flyer because of the injury stuff anyway, where he got drafted. But you can't look at this summer. You can't look at these first 2 games and think like he can break camp with the main team. I don't think. That would be my. I mean, unless something really significant happens, I don't see why you would even bother. And it's not like there's been any. There's barely been flashes that it would translate even a little bit to me. So right now,
no, and there's no pressure to do that, right? There's no pressure to bring him up to the NBA roster. You can say, hey, we know it. We could write the script right now, right? Obviously, Dariq's coming back from the injury. We want him to take his time. We want the recovery to be done properly, and we want him to go ahead and develop and build himself back up until he's ready. And by the way, even 100% healthy Noah Clowney, when they drafted him a year ago, spent the entire year there. Now, different scenario in terms of the team and what they were trying to accomplish, but it took all the way until the end of the year. And we, frankly, pounded our fist on the table about why he should have been up on this team sooner a year ago. But we've seen it organizationally. They are not going to rush guys ahead of schedule. So from that standpoint, I agree with you too. And obviously, Friday night, you watch that game, you see him have the breakaway, and he seemingly cannot elevate to put one down when he had a clear path going at the basket. Like, all of those things are true. I'll paraphrase some of the stuff that he had mentioned after, I think maybe after the Friday game, could have been after the Sunday game, where he basically said, he's like, it's still about trusting my body, like getting back to the point where I trust my body to do those things. So if I want to look at it from a positive standpoint, it's like, hey, he's out there. It looks like he's getting healthier. It looks like he is healthy, but now it's about trusting yourself in those moments. The things you mentioned, which is something we talked about when we were looking at his tape, going back to, again, limited stuff at Duke, foot injury there as well, is that he's regarded as being an athletic prospect, but does he have that get the corner ability that we talk about, right? And sometimes when you look at him from any player from college to the pros, what looks good at college, or even we talk about Keon Johnson, like what looks good in summer league doesn't quite get there when you get to the NBA level. And that's kind of the part of his game that I'm curious about. And it's one of the things that I mentioned. If he's going to be successful at the NBA level, I thought it was going to be about everything else and less about if he can be a guy that drives the basket, that takes guys off the dribble. It's going to be about ball handling and a little bit of vision and the outside shooting. Like all these other things need to come together for him. So while I'm not going to be any lower on him than I was coming in, I also clearly am not going to get any higher. And I think a nice start in the G League with no pressure as of right now looks like the path forward for him. And that's fine. You said it, like the age is right. It's all good. There's no pressure on him here. Defensively, I will say just quickly, I think defensively he's shown some things in the summer league that are at least exciting from that standpoint. Stays in front of guys, nice, contest perimeter shots without fouling. Like there's some things there on the defensive end that if you want to pull on a few extra positive threads, he's definitely shown it on that side, but that's not going to be his story at the NBA level.
Yeah, look, and I think the Clowney comp is good in the sense that not as a player comp and an archetype, but as a, hey, it came into summer league last year. It was super raw. It looked all over the place. You saw flashes with him. At least you saw like flashes of athleticism, but he just like didn't know where to be on the court. Kind of didn't like look comfortable when he got the ball. And then a season in the G League later, and he gets to the end of the season, and he has like 7 games of just like sick NBA stats and looks totally comfortable, right? And so I think that like no one's pouring dirt on Dariq Whitehead's grave here. I think he's in an incredible spot for his age and like this team's timeline that there is just no pressure here. Like go to the G League, play a whole season, show that you can stay a whole season worth of health, right? That you can get comfortable, that you feel fully comfortable with like the foot and his legs and everything. And then at that point, let's like reevaluate it. I'm only just saying, like, we got to look at what happened here. And it was just it's just, there's no other side to it. It's just like, this is it. This is what it is. It just did not look great. And at the same time, it's totally understandable.
Yeah. Oh, no, 100%. I can't call this pushback, but I'm going to continue to wait and see. Cause I won't be shocked if he starts in G League, but mid-season, he gets the call up and you start seeing it. It's going to come down to being productive. We didn't even mention that he was 0-7 from beyond the arc on Friday night, 1 for 12 in the first game, got a little bit better in the second game, knocked down some shots. So the shooting has to come around here. But I'll stop short of, I'll give everybody, including myself, the optimism that like there will be a time during this season that we will see him a little bit sooner. And I think it'll come down to timeline around when you bring up a young player relative to what this team's doing. Right?
With the way the Nets are right now, one final thought on that. I generally agree with you. Only because he's still so young and the Nets just it just doesn't matter really here.
Right.
To me,
it goes both ways. It doesn't matter. You don't have to bring him up. You could, but you don't have to, right?
Like, I probably would only do it if he was absolutely crushing so hard that it just there was like no further development to be had.
Right.
And that to me is probably a little hard to see right now. It's not out of the realm of, it's not out of the range of outcomes, I don't think. But I would, even if it was like middling, I'm not sure how quick I would go on that one. I think I'd need to be like, hey, he's killing it here so hard that it just like doesn't make sense to keep him. Otherwise, just like, why apply the pressure? If he was 23, 24 and you just had to know, that's different. But that's just not the case.
Speaking of a 23, 24-year-old, one Jalen Wilson also taking part in the Summer League. And then, of course, the other young draft pick from a year ago in Noah Clowney. We talk about what we've seen from both of these players, and the one in Jalen Wilson, who has been around the NBA level a year ago. What are our takeaways from these two players as we continue our way through the Summer League? Close out the show coming up here in just one moment.
All right, before we get to that, I'll tell you about our friends over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championship. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain your vehicle, level it up to peak performance, superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, so much more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP, bring home those huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers.
All right, so as we wrap up today's Locked On Nets episode, talking about 2 Summer League games down for the Brooklyn Nets. They also came back on Friday night. That was a fun one. They gave a little bit of a thrill there, storming from behind to get the win. And then you watched on Sunday and you thought, I don't think that's going to be the case. It's probably not going to happen here against the Clippers. But we talk about the young players, obviously Keon Johnson and we talk about Dariq Whitehead. But let's start with Noah Clowney, because the footnote on Jalen Wilson, I think, is something that we're not really surprised by, at least for me coming out of Summer League. For Noah Clowney, this is an awkward spot where there's no other real big bodies on the Nets roster. So they're getting to use him kind of in different ways on a possession to possession basis. These games are totally helter skelter. So the ball's all over the place. That's not conducive for forwards or for centers. And that being said, he's done everything you want him to do. He showcased all the things on both ends of the floor. No concerns here for Noah Clowney. Like, just good reps for him, I think. This is like every positive that you want to have for him coming out of just getting some run here in Summer League.
Yeah. I think that for me, even if Summer League had just gone off the rails for him, I actually wouldn't even have cared. Just because he showed a sample size at the NBA level that's already good enough. And so even if like this got dialed back some, or the roster wasn't set up perfectly to maximize his skills or whatever, it was actually, sort of the opposite of what we said about these other guys. I actually didn't even care what happened with him here, because he just showed that he is ready. It's nice that nine fouls in the first game aside.
Calm down.
It is
hey,
nice.
Listen, Doug, they give you 10. They give you 10. You want to use most of them.
And I think he's been fine here. Defensively, he's shown some, some at some points, except some of these fouls were rough ones too. Like, they probably weren't. They were a little ticky-tack, and one even got called back. But he showed great recovery skills. On ball stuff's really good. 6 blocks in the 2 games. And he's working basically without a real point guard, which is always going to be tough for him, because he's not like he's an on-ball creator at all. And so what's he going to do? He's going to have to rely on getting into space and making sure people can find him. Right. Rim running stuff is going to be out of here when you have like Jacob Gilliard running the point. So it's just hard. It's just going to be hard for him. All that said, to me, the firm takeaways here are the things we already knew. It's like the athleticism clearly plays. He's so much more comfortable. He understands sort of where to be now, at least. And I think that there's just really aren't many more questions at this level for him to answer. No. It's the next level about where is he a 4 or 5? Is he going to be able to continue to floor space? Those are the bigger questions. NBA level defense, he's already getting there.
Yeah.
And so I don't think Summer League was going to answer. It wasn't going to answer a lot of questions for Noah Clowney, but it wasn't going to pose any either.
No, that's probably fair. Yeah, that's probably right. And again, because some of the disjointed nature of these games and possessions, right? It's not like you feel like even the 9 fouls, you go, oh, well, what's he responsible for? Who knows? Probably nothing. And the other, one of the things at a high level before we talk Jalen Wilson is, it's one of those things because of how young the team is. I'm like, well, there's no world where Trendon Watford or Cam Thomas are playing in Summer League, but I wish they were. Just because I want to see them with Noah Clowney. I want to see them with Jalen Wilson, because these are guys that are going to be getting run together at the NBA level. So there is just that part of it where when you look over the G League roster, the Summer League roster, I should say, and you go, yeah, a lot of these guys are G League destined. So how much can you get from these other players that are out there on the court with them? One of the other guys, though, in Jalen Wilson. So, okay, the overwhelmingly positive thing for Jalen Wilson is the perimeter shooting. The guy did it. He was a part of the rally on Friday night. He continued to be successful on Sunday, knocking down outside shots. This isn't a concern. This is why he's a second-round pick and why he's an older player coming into the NBA. But what I will say is Jalen Wilson's at the basket game leaves a lot to be desired. And I mean a lot to be desired as in he'll never be able to do that. Hardcore, consistently successful at the NBA level, it looks like, right? So you're a perimeter guy. That's your role. And that's what I'm getting out of this is hey, lean more into the thing that you're going to be at the NBA level. And that's knocking down these outside shots. It's not a bad thing, but just a reality.
Yeah. Again, this is something we already knew.
Right.
This was not going to be answered. Is what he is. It's fine. They got something here. They got an NBA rotation guy in the second round, near the end of the second round, and he can play at the NBA level too. He's not a career starter. Yep. He's not going to be a guy that's probably even top 7 on a team that's really, really good. But is he a guy that can play NBA rotation minutes? Yeah, the shooting is there. 47% from 3 in the Summer League.
Yeah,
carrying over him, going through a pretty nice shooting stretch, at the NBA level already. He has an NBA level body in terms of overall strength. He's not fast. He's not super bounce. There's no on ball bounce, but it's okay. On any real team, you're not handing him the ball and letting him cook anyway. You're hoping that he can attack a few closeouts here and there in like the most optimal situations, and for the most part, make the threes when the opportunity is presented to him. And he's been able to do that. And so Summer League gives you a little more chance for those other opportunities, right? Because you just are a better basketball player than a lot of the other guys. That's why you've got real NBA minutes and these other guys haven't, right? So like you are just better at basketball writ large than most of the other guys that are on your team. And so it makes sense that you would take those opportunities to actually try getting past the guy, attacking at the rim. You know, there's a little more transition stuff, so you're going to have a few more opportunities, but it's not going to be a part of his game. I don't think that's a part of his game that ever really grows. And it's just like totally fine. Can he make threes? Can he defend 3/4s, like 3.5s? Like, yeah, he pretty much can. And he's like a decent NBA rotation. He's an NBA rotation player. Yeah. And that's probably where he caps out. And that's good for like where they drafted him.
And remember, they had ebbs and flows to his season last year. The reason why we felt like, okay, the 3-point shooting is going to be there in the end because he had a very large sample size where it went very well. He also had a long stretch where it went absolutely ice cold. So when you look back, and he played in 43 games last season, but only shot 32% from beyond the arc, we think that, you know, that number was already a little bit stronger than what the final stat tells you. But that's the best takeaway you can have too. It's like go to Summer League, absolutely light it up, and let everybody know that when you come into the NBA this season, that's going to be 100% what your role is going to carve out to be. And by the way, if you're going to get a bigger role and a larger sample size, that's what you need to be if you're complementing a Cam Thomas going forward, a guy that spaces the floor, a guy that punishes defenses when they throw double teams in his direction and you're wide open in the corner. Like, that is a real question that needs to get answered, even if there isn't pressure on results in the upcoming season. Overall, then, as we close out the first 2 games, few more to go here for the Brooklyn Nets in Summer League this week. Did anybody else on this roster, right, jump out to you or give you, because I asked the fan base, you know, it's like, who else are you interested in? They threw out some names like Jalen Martin, KJ Jones, and the like, but it really does come down to these core set of players are the only ones as of now that I've taken anything away of substance, outside of saying Gilliard, we obviously knew was too small. That's never going to be a real possibility. And Mark Armstrong hasn't shown anything of substance to make you go, oh, okay, maybe we need to look at him too. So we're still talking about this core 4 of examined players here in Summer League.
Nah, I don't think so. Like the other guys, like, you know, even Martin, it's been like, you know, did fine in his opportunity. And like, it's just nothing like really jumps off the page at you at all. I wonder actually how much, like, I actually was curious. I was wondering if Clowney would even play like another one of these games, like if he would just be 2 and done or something like that, right? Like because it's like, we've seen enough. Like, there's no reason to. He got up to game speed. There's no reason to risk injury. He's gonna have a real role. Like, let's call it a day. I wouldn't be shocked if like he got really dialed back over these next couple of games. Him specifically. I think everyone else is probably out there and gonna roll. But I was wondering a little bit about him. But otherwise, not. No one really jumped off the page here.
And sorry, I lumped in KJ Jones with everybody else here. He has not gotten into a game yet. But to your point about some guys not seeing the court over the remainder of this potentially, I expect him to get some run. He's obviously the D2 product who, like, if some of those things can translate, you could start to say, oh, what a nice flyer to take a chance on here for the Brooklyn Nets.
And that's why, by the way, too, I wonder if like we see like Clowney and Jalen Wilson maybe dial it back a little bit here. Like just so they can get longer look at some of these other guys. Like everyone else, you maybe want to see sort of what they can do. But I wonder
if the NBAers, these are the guys that have their roles. Like, we know
what contracts, like they're just kind of set right here. It's like, there's no, you know, they just have they're getting paid for the next couple of years. Right. And so you got them back with the game speed. You got the other guys to be able to play with NBA guys. Now let's kind of turn it over to see what we have at the end of the roster. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a little more run for some of these other guys in the next couple of games. All right, we're going to get out of here. Much appreciate everyone rocking with us through the offseason, seeing really incredible numbers. And it's really just a testament to everyone out there that wants to talk Nets. And I think that, like the idea that the Nets chose a direction and there's like sort of a direction to talk about now. And that's what we're doing over the next couple of years, obviously, but still 5 days a week all through the summer. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Nets on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Nets wherever you listen to the podcast.
He who learns but does not think is lost. He who thinks but does not learn is in great danger. That, my friends, is Confucius.
Oh, one of the all-time great poets. A bit overrated. We'll be back again tomorrow talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.
Basketball.